that old Go Power charge controller we have in here, we had nothing but problems with it. When it worked good. When it didn't, it almost caught on fire. Alright everybody, in this video I'm going to show you on your Rockwood Minilite how to switch out your Go Power PWM 30 amp charge controller into a Victron MPPT charge controller, so stay tuned. Alright everybody, welcome to another episode of Unique Adventures, where we do all things travel from land to sea and everything in between. RV camping, destination, RV modifications, and that's what we're going to be working on today. So we have our factory solar on our roof. It is 380 watts of Go Power solar, powered by this guy right here. This is a Go Power PWM charge controller. Just came factory with the unit, and you're probably asking, why are you moving away from this? One, because it's PWM, and obviously, as we know, MPPT is far superior with your charging. This is an upgrade I wanted to do down the road, but my hand was actually forced, and I'm going to tell you why. I noticed that my smart shunt was telling me that we were losing 11 amps, and it seemed very peculiar because the 12 volt fridge wasn't on, it wasn't running, but I figured it was just a glitch in the smart shunt. We end up finding out the next morning that our batteries were completely wiped. They were dead. We ended up figuring out a way to get them re-jump started through our truck. We hooked up our 7-pin, got the solar and everything starting to run back up as the sun was coming over. In the middle part of the day, my smart shunt was telling me that we were only bringing in like 2 to 3 amps. This guy was telling me I was bringing in like 14 or 15, so we were still having that 11 amp parasitic draw. And the little bit of research that I saw puts this to our solar panels actually pulling the wattage back out. It could be the charge controller, it could have been the solar panels. So we just charged up what we could, and then as soon as we got to optimal charging to get us through our last night, we shut the solar system down. And once we did that, the last night we were there, we had no issues with maintaining our power. So we know that our solar was the culprit. So I came home, obviously we checked our solar panels. They tested out just fine. But before we left, my wife brought it to my attention that she smelled something like plasticky in the trailer. I go in there and I'm smelling, and I'm coming right back to this guy, and it has got the nastiest smell. We take it off. It is completely hot. It is almost to the point where you can't touch it. The wires are completely hot. So we ended up shutting it down. It actually had burnt part of the LCD screen on here. This thing was not in good shape. I'm assuming this is our culprit. If you can hear this, I'm pretty sure your charge controller isn't supposed to make that noise. In fact, we're going to bring in our smart shunt here. No, not happening. So I obviously wasn't going to put another one of those back in here. Now the only problem is that this is a factory unit, so it goes into a factory spot. There's not really anything that you can put in there that's flush mount like that. We have said that we wanted to go up to a Victron unit. This is where you have to get kind of creative with your trailers and try to figure out where you can put things. So let's go ahead and take you in and show you a little bit about that. Alright, so as you can see here, this is where the factory location flush mounts. And we've got the wiring out right now, and what we're going to end up doing, and this is, remember, this is a Rockwood 2109s 2022, where they still have this entertainment center. If you're looking at a newer 2109, they actually don't have these entertainment centers anymore. So if we look down here, you can get a rough look at this little false wall, and it comes out, and that is what we are going to retrofit everything to, because these wires drop straight into here. And so let's show you some of the other things that we're going to be doing that the factory didn't do to kind of help us manage this solar system. All right, so as we showed you, we got our MPPT 30 amp charge controller. We're going to be putting that in. So the other thing that I've heard other people saying, and I'm surprised that some of the RV manufacturers haven't done this, if this is kind of standard when you put in solar, is putting in an isolator switch. This is something that we didn't have, and I wish we would have had in our system, because then you can literally just shut it down. It's a disconnect between the charge controller and the solar panel, so that can't happen anymore. So if you have an issue or you need to turn the solar panels completely off, you hit that switch and it's all good. So we picked up this guy here. They make many different models of this, and essentially it's just a switch, a 40 amp switch, since we're using a 30 amp charge controller, and this might be overkill. Let me know in the comments if you feel like this is overkill. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to run the panels positive and negative in, and then run these guys back out to the charge controller. So it'll just make things a little bit easier, and if we ever get into a bind again, we can just hit the switch and we don't have to worry about that. It is a little bit bulky, not gonna lie, but we did fit everything down here, and it looks like it's going to fit very well into space. So let's show you kind of what the layout is going to look like. All right, so you've got the isolator switch that's going to sit right on the top here. Now, as you can see, this is really thin plastic. What we're going to end up doing is putting a 1/2 inch backer board behind here to solidify this thing up so that this thing has something nice to mount to. We also retrofitted this piece that's going to go on the front, and this will allow us a little bit extra to attach that backer board to, give it a little bit of extra strength. And the other thing is that when this guy sits down here, somewhere in this ballpark, we're going to have good heatsink clearance under there, which will be nice, and it'll just make for a really clean install. So the wires will come up through the top, go behind this false wall, and then come back up through the bottom into the charge controller. We are hoping that all of this goes pretty well, but let's go ahead and try to put this stuff together and see what we end up with. All right, so we're back here. We've got our baseboard set up underneath here. So we got the charge controller on here. We got the isolation switch on here. Now what we are working with doing is getting the wiring to run from the isolator switch back down to the charge controller. So for that, those isolator switches, you need these little spade deals. That's what came with them. And then on the other side, you have this nice ferrule connection that we've put on here, and it's solid, it's not going anywhere. Essentially all you do is you take the ferrule crimp, and you can get them in a kit. It just slides over there, and then you just kind of clamp it down like you're going to see here, and that's pretty much it. And then you get this clean, pristine connection that isn't going to move. And then when you're going to put it in, fits in there nice, and you don't have to worry about frayed wires going all over the place. And it accepts it real nice. So if you got a bigger gauge wire to go into a smaller hole, that ferrule crimper is great for that. we just picked up this little set of all these different sizes, which is really cool, and it's not that expensive, maybe like 20 bucks. So we're going to keep working to getting this wiring set up here and to go back down into the cubby and see if it all works. Alright, so we got our new solar charge controller installed, this Victron smart controller. We also installed that isolator switch. So you can see here we packed it into the factory cabinet on the right hand side. We figured this was the best place to put it and still keep it around where the rest of the wiring was at, but makes it super simple to get inside, flip that isolator switch when we're not needing solar or when we are needing solar, and to be able to have that. It's really slick. So let's see kind of what is happening with the smart solar controller from Victron. Our phone there, who's got our smart shunt and our smart controller, right now it is measuring nothing because the isolator switch is on. So we're going to come down here, pop it, hit our smart solar. So as you can see right now, we're bringing in about 100 watts. Mind you, this is in September, almost October, and we're here in the Northwest, so we're not getting really amazing sun right now, but it is definitely working. And I like that this tells you the wattage that you're bringing in, how much the panels are bringing in raw, and then also how much it's converting down to actually charge the batteries. So overall, looks like a great system so far. So this install was actually fairly simple. We had the two wires already coming down off the old charge controller. We just put that isolator switch on there to be able to provide as a circuit breaker, but also provide a break between the panels and the charge controller. So we just ran those other wires down, and they were long enough to get into that setup. So if you have a 2109s Rockwood and you still have this cabinet on this side, if you've got an older model, if you've got a 2023 or above, it's probably not going to have this like this here. But if you've got an older one and you're trying to do this, those wires will drop down into the cabinet, and you can just pop. There's that little false panel that we had back there, and we just gave it some structure, put some extra plywood behind it to make it more rigid, and then we built that isolator switch to sit on the top end of it, and then on the bottom ran the rest of the wires back under and back to the front of the trailer to get into the batteries that were on the other side of the old charge controller. And so we just provided that break in there. Everything sits in there nice. We can still use it for storage, which is great. We didn't lose a spot, and we didn't have to run a lot of extra wires, and it's nice and hidden. We also elevated it a little bit to give it a little extra ventilation in there, so it's not like right on something. So that's why you see that it's a little bit we opted to put a little piece of wood on both sides to give it that extra little break in there to let the heat sinks breathe a little bit easier. But for the most part, not a hard install. You obviously want to make sure when you're playing with the solar and stuff to have all your power off. Make sure you've got your solar panels disconnected up on the roof, just to make sure that you got everything taken care of. But so far, I really think we're gonna like having all this Victron equipment in here. It works well with the apps, and to being able to see what your system's doing. For us, it's just great to have, you know, that knowledge and stuff. And that old Go Power charge controller we have in here, we had nothing but problems with it. When it worked good. When it didn't, it almost caught on fire. So I really am glad we got away from that charge controller, and that charge controller is only like $130 on Amazon. This charge controller is just a little bit over $100 more. So if you were getting into this and building your system and thinking you're going to go with this PWM Go Power, I wouldn't do it. I would get that extra money, get that MPPT, get into Victron. It's a great piece of equipment. If you want to see the items that we use below, we're going to drop it in the description here on what items we use to kind of build the setup in case you want to see that or buy these things for yourself. They will be Amazon affiliate links, so if you want to buy something from there, obviously it'll help us out with the channel. We'll put the money right back in and help growing everything. But that's pretty much it. It's a great setup. So drop me a comment. Do you have Victron equipment? Are you trying to put Victron equipment into your solar package? Let us know kind of how things have worked out for you. Make sure you hit that thumbs up, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed so that when our solar system almost catches on fire and we do some changing out of some parts and get to some more superior equipment and show you how we did it, you won't miss it. But until then, we'll see you guys in the next adventure.